Today we're going to look at 12 players that we're going to need to exercise some caution on. We need to pay attention to the market. We need to pay attention to their age. We need to look at them more thoroughly. We're not going to tell you to sell them because I'm more than likely going to buy them somewhere down the line anyways in Dynasty. Pick them up, draft them, whatever. But we do need to tread these waters lightly. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now because I'm helping you build your Dynasty teams. We're going over strategies. We're going over these rookies every single day. Click that button. Stop missing out and get better at Dynasty. Build that team. We're going to start off with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey. Now, big time prospect. It's going to be at the Niners for a bit. And honestly, I feel like we got a few more years left. I feel like we got some time left. However, we're RB2 right now in Dynasty ADP 9. And if we look at him from a startup draft perspective here, he's rocking ADP 9. We have wide receivers all around him. You could pay down, get another running back. You're not going to get that production unless you strike gold. But ADP 9, for the long term, what could you do with Christian McCaffrey? Once you got him on your roster, could you get the players around that range and trade? Could that happen? Are you looking to do this? Or are you going wide receiver and you're pounding that in startup drafts? If I have him on my team and I'm winning now, I'm good to go. I'm keeping him. I'm hoarding him. I'm holding him. That's what I'm saying. If I'm middle of the road or I'm far from winning a championship, this is your piece to get right. This is your piece to get right. But where we need to exercise caution at, he's ADP 9. We got wide receivers all around him. You got a lot of pivot points here. We got a couple years left on that contract. We're an older running back prospect. I think we got some more years left, but nobody knows. And that one big injury, if that happens this year, that's going to take that value a good bit. That's probably a good buying point. That's probably when you want to buy in. Maybe if something happens in season, that's probably a good time to buy. Right now, the price is up there. It's not dropping at all, and it's been high forever, since 2019. 2019. The rubber's going to meet the road. Father Time always wins, except with Tom Brady. Maybe Christian McCaffrey can beat up Father Time, but we're at ADP 9 in the value charts. Maybe you can swoop in and catch him at a cheaper price later. But right now, he's got wide receivers all around him. All around him. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 9, ADP 12. How long is this going to keep going on with this production? I love him for the short term. I feel like there's other wide receivers around him I can go with, other pivot points. And for the long term here, we're 30 years old. I feel like even if he loses a step, he's still faster than everybody. We're on a fast-paced offense. Potential out after this year for the Dolphins as the money keeps going up. Maybe 2026, you look at that contract. Maybe then. And if you're in a startup draft, are you loving that? If you got him on your roster, you're good to win. Of course, Tyreek Hill. But you want to exercise some caution here in startup drafts. A good time to buy is when if something happens, because you know he's going to come back on the field and be fast. You know that's going to happen. So he's at ADP 12, wide receiver 9. He's a first-round pick, fringe second-round pick. If the price dip, you can buy. But right now, just exercise some caution. See what else is on the board. See if you can trade back. See what you can do. Just know, the rubber's going to hit the road eventually. Jonathan Taylor, RB5, ADP 16. Now, we're looking at a running back here. And we look at running backs here in 1 to 2 year windows. But he's been hurt a lot. He's been on the injury report a lot. I loved him coming out of college. I love the size, adjusted athleticism. And the market's iffy with him. You notice we had that big drop back in early 2023. And it's just been like this. It's trying to figure out what to do with them. It's up, it's down, it's up and down with ADP. They don't know what to do with Jonathan Taylor. That is going to spike up a little bit right before the season because they're going to see that he's going to score you points on your lineup, and that matters. RB5 in Dynasty. We're 25 years old. Potential out after 2025, but could land in a better situation. Running back means not for long in Latin. That being said, Jonathan Taylor, a player you got to pay attention to. ADP 16 is pretty expensive. There's a lot to rock with that's more of a long-term investment. Of course, like I said with the other two players, if you're built good to go, then you're rocking it. Of course. But if you're rebuilding or starting a build, you got to think about this. Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver 13, ADP 20. And this is an interesting one here because we're 25 years old. So we're not old, we're not young, we're in the middle. We should be in the prime, but the contract situation's weird. The wide receiver position, though, is starting to get flooded with talent. You can move around the board. Once a wide receiver goes up in value and you don't think he's Jamar Chase level, you can kind of like go back in the rankings a bit, pick up a couple wide receivers or a wide receiver and a draft pick and keep the process going. But we're at wide receiver 13. We're a fringe wide receiver 1. You got 4 wide receiver 1 weeks last year. A handful of wide receiver 2 weeks. His bottom games aren't bad. But you look at some of the other wide receivers around him, a little bit lower in ADP, you can catch the spikiness there at a cheaper price tag. You do not know what the long term is going to look like. And I can tell you this, the wide receiver position is going to be flooded. So when a wide receiver goes up in value, maybe you want to peel it back a little bit. Wide receiver 13, and if you do not regard him as a top tier producer, he's a very good talent. I think he is a top talent. Not a top tier, but a top talent in the league at the wide receiver position. Great at breaking off routes. I love him. I love his game. I loved buying him the last couple years when he was at a reduced cost. But we're at ADP 20. We're at a weird spot in the contract. The market is not moving. The market's not moving on Brandon Aiyuk. You want to exercise some caution here. You want to look at the market here. You want to look at the players behind him. Look at the front. Look at the back. You can always buy him again later if he comes at a reduced cost if something happens. Travis Kelce, ADP 50. What are we doing here? Do you guys have that much FOMO at the tight end position that you keep drafting him this high? He's 35 years old. He's closer to Jason Witten's age than Kyle Pitts right now. He's closer to that. I guess he's always been closer to that, but it's more apparent right now, and he's the tight end 5 in Dynasty. I see the production there. I see the production, but again, I'm not going to FOMO over that for the short term in a startup draft. If I'm built, I'm good to go to win a championship, cool. Anything other than that, if I'm not top 2 in my league, if I'm not confident, if I'm in it to win it, I'm cool. If I'm middle of the road, I'm sweating bullets to make the playoffs, something's got to give. Something's got to give. Tight end 5 though, ADP 50, that's kind of high. I get it, you want to moneyball the tight end position, but sometimes you got to look at this and think, man, is it worth the cost here for the long term? Especially if you got some rookies drafted ahead of him. If you got like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors right before him, are you really going to build with a 35-year-old tight end on the roster, knowing you got to ramp up with a player here that could hit instantly, but could also need a ramp up of like 6 weeks? So you may start off a little bit slow, and then now you're looking to 2025. He's 36 years old, getting a rougher point of the contract too. Are you really doing that? Look at your team. Look how you're constructed. With a guy like this, ADP 50 is kind of high when you really think about it. Caleb Williams, QB8 in Superflex. He's a first-round pick. So if he hits this year, starts showing some production, he's going to go up in value, but we're already close to the ceiling here. QB1's really the ceiling for him, and it's possible, but we're already at QB8 right now. We're at a spot where we can go top tier at other positions. We can moneyball the quarterback position if you really want to. There's other quarterbacks on the board. There's other things to lean to, but he is a top tier talent. He could flash this year. We do have some weapons, but he's also a rookie. There's a rookie ramp up here. He's a French first round pick with a lot of upside, but the downside could be there. But the ramp up is very apparent as well. The ramp up's fine. That could allow you to buy him on the cheap or hold steady at the price tag. But getting quarterbacks is like plucking teeth in Superflex. But exercising caution is fine. Christian Watson, wide receiver 36. He's hurt a lot. He shows you that upside. It's nice and flashy, especially in the back end of a draft. But ADP 68, we're still in the top 100. There might be other notable wide receivers to go with here. And then on top of that, we have a lot of competition in the offense. He's got a small sample of production. He's not a young chicken. We're 25 years old this year. What are we going to do with Christian Watson? Wide receiver 36 in a vacuum seems cheap for a guy like this. But it's also a cautionary tale that, hey, do you want a guy like this that's just spiky? Do you want that on your team? Derrick Henry, looking at him, we're RB17. It's a good price tag. We look at running backs in 1 to 2 years windows, which is great because that's his window. But again, you're doing a startup draft, and it really depends on how you're built at this point. Because if you got a couple rookies right now at this point, it's going to be hard to look at him. It's going to be very hard knowing that you got a big ramp-up period with 2 of your top players. You're trying to backfill with some of the back-end players. Those players are more than likely wide receiver. Depending on how you're built and how you're feeling with the pool of the draft, you may have to move out of this. On top of this, you're picking up an asset here that's a falling knife in the next couple years. And then also, the Ravens are weird with injuries. They have been at the running back position. Name one that's went unscathed a full season the last couple years. That's been all right. That's been all right. On top of that, though, he's been productive. And I showed his last 3 to 4 seasons there since the pandemic. He has been one of the top running backs in the league when on the field. Again, if I'm built and I'm good to go, I'm rocking Derrick Henry. And you can catch him good in trade. You can definitely do that right now. But in a startup draft, you really got to make sure your build's good. Javonte Williams, I don't think it's much longer for him. And the market's saying the same thing. Look at that. It's dropping. The needle's going down. The needle's dropping. And Javonte Williams, RB24, news came out that he's got to compete for a starting job. We got McLaughlin there. They drafted Aiyuk Estimate, a late round pick. But again, late round picks can earn a role. Can earn a role. They don't value running backs. The NFL doesn't. Why should they heavily value Javonte Williams? He's not the player the regime drafted. He's been injured. Last year, he was on the field a good bit. The year prior, he had some injuries. That being said, Javonte Williams, RB24, seems like a discount for a running back, but could sneakily be a horrible value for the long term. We're out of this contract after this year. Probably not going to be with the Broncos unless he comes back cheap or exceeds expectations. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 19. Look at the production down there. Look at the ADP. We have a good floor. We can definitely say that. We can definitely have some good spike weeks. We have 2 young running backs here that can command a lot of workload. That can do that. Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker. You can hand it to them all day long. And then you got other wide receivers sucking up target share. You're looking at a wide receiver here that is 27 years old, getting a 22% target share. You're drafting at ADP 35 range. You're drafting him around wide receiver 20 range. He's only getting a 22% target share. He's getting a lot of air yards. He's stretching it downfield. As a talent for real football, I love DK Metcalf. I was drafting him up. But you're in a startup draft here. You're looking at an older wide receiver who's still got a good step left in him. Getting a 22% target share. Sharing it with Lockett. Lockett should be gone sooner than later as he's an older asset. And DK Metcalf should be there for the long term with Jackson Smith and Jigba. But we're looking at a guy that should be at a cheaper ADP 12 months from now. And maybe you want to buy then. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 51, 109 ADP. I get it, you want a wide receiver that's a leader on their team, but he ain't going to be that too much longer. We got a quarterback situation here. We're transitioning to some young quarterbacks here that need some development. This team's probably going to be a slower paced team. The air yards may not be there. The acuity of targets may not be there early on this year. He's a guy you may want to stay away from in startup drafts. Trayon Burks, wide receiver 80, ADP 181. I think the writing's on the wall here. At best, wide receiver 4 unless there's some injuries. He could be well with the Titans, getting drag routes over the middle, getting some shorter catches, maybe used in the slot a little bit more. Probably not best used, getting an 18.2 average depth of target. Maybe something more on the shorter end so he can pick up that yak. But the market has tanked on him. As you see in the ADP below me, he's about done. He's about finished. I do not see this turning around for him, even in a new situation. And there's a lot of good wide receivers coming out of college, coming out of the high school ranks. It's going to be flooded with talent. He's valued at wide receiver 80. The market's making a stance here. I think Trayon Burks is super scary, even at this reduced price tag. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who you exercising caution with? Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.